Good Friday morning. I think my friends in the audience know how much I love public speaking. And there are so many of you staring at me right now. Thank you all for coming, and I'm like billboard size over this, like waking up to my worst nightmare. I actually had something written, and then last night around 9 o'clock, I scrapped it all and started over again. I know. Not like I didn't have other things to do this week. But, so I kind of simplified things because my sister says that I sometimes get way too down deep in my geeky hole and then lose track of reality. So I tried to simplify things. I'm going to assume that none of you know who I am and what I do. Some people think I'm a lawyer, a photographer, a writer, a blogger, and all of those things are kind of true. And actually, people who know me don't really sometimes know what I do. In fact, the other day, I was talking to my sister about, coming back from a work trip, and she's like, I mean, you don't really work. She thinks I'm on permanent vacation. She said, I mean, you go to dinner with your friends and take pictures and get paid for it. I did that last night. I just didn't get paid for it. So part of that's true. I do love what I do. I am primarily now a photographer. I do write sometimes, but I think if there are any writers in the audience, you all know that writing is not that lucrative these days, sadly, and that's why writing is going the way it is, because no one's willing to pay for good writers. So I do mostly do photography. I am a blogger. I did start my blog about 15 years ago. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And I still write it today when I have the time. I just unfortunately don't have time for it, and that's really sad to me. I did want to thank all of the sponsors today. Thank you so much. Thank you, George and Eric, for inviting me to do this, and the building at 1900. This is an amazing space. So thank you all for coming today. The philosopher Alan Watts once famously asked, what makes you itch? And what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really spend your life? And then he tells us to go do it. Forget the money, he says, because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living. That is to go on doing things that you don't like doing, which is stupid. And it is. I've been there. Success is not money, and money is not success. In my experience, if you do what you love doing, life has a strange way of sorting itself out. And if you knew all of my story, you would know that this can be more true than you'd dare to believe. I know this sounds like misguided optimism, so I'll quickly add that hard work, discipline, sacrifice, and a healthy dose of failure and humility, and a fistful of faith are all required for Alan Watts' advice to work. Having a passion for something alone does not guarantee success, and pursuing that passion does not guarantee success either. You've got to earn it. And you all are creators, I'm assuming. You love to create. That is what you do. That is your itch. I get it. And so from one creator to another, there are 4 things that I've learned from my craft and my journey that I'd like to share with you. Number 1, you do you. And don't mind the people who are giving you strange looks for doing it. Graduating from college is like the beginning of a horse race. The gates open and the horses bolt. The difference is that out of college, there's no set finish line. Everyone bolts in different directions. And if you haven't decided on your direction, you kind of bolt into the unknown. That was me. I don't know if that was you. That was me. And I was surrounded by disgustingly accomplished peers who would go on to bolt towards disgustingly amazing achievements, like winning Oscars and Emmys, founding major corporations, and being named the #1 golfer in the world. These are the horses that bolted out of the gate with me. And the sense of urgency I had was great. But I read 2 books, coincidentally back to back, shortly after I graduated college, that really helped me get some perspective. One of them was Dave Eggers' A Heartbreaking Work of Genius, which published the year that I graduated from college. The other was Norm Maclean's A River Runs Through It, which was published 2 years before I was born. Both are phenomenal stories. Both are largely autobiographical. Both were the first books published by their respective authors, and both books were subsequently nominated for Pulitzer Prizes. But there's one difference I couldn't stop thinking about. Dave Eggers published his book at the age of 30. Norm Maclean published his at 74. For one author, it took 30 years of living to tell an incredible story of a lifetime. For the other, it took 74 years. And what I realized is that doing something worth doing and telling takes different people different amounts of time. And what I needed to do was live more life. I needed to do more of what I do, and perhaps someday I'd have a story worth telling too. Fast forward 4 years, and I was still bolting into the unknown. I was in law school, and I was miserable. It's not that I didn't enjoy the study of law, quite to the contrary. I found the coursework actually very stimulating. It really appealed to the logical side of my brain, that geeky side that I told you about earlier that tries to organize the entire world into a filing cabinet. But my creative itch wasn't getting scratched, so to alleviate my misery, I sat down and asked myself the question that the philosopher Alan Watts asked. What is it that makes me itch? And it came down to 4 things. I know you're going to laugh because 2 of these things I think everyone would say they have this itch too. Writing, photography, eating, and traveling. Well, just around that time, something happened on the internet, and it was called the blog. Some of you are too young to probably remember what a revolutionary thing the blog was. And some of you are probably too young to remember what a revolutionary thing the internet was. Nothing before it, like nothing before it, the blog thing gave the common man a platform on the world stage. With a blog, a nobody could become a somebody. Well, I wasn't interested in becoming a somebody, I just needed a creative outlet, so I started a blog. For a number of reasons, I didn't put my name on it. For one thing, the internet is a scary place, and I didn't want my name floating out there in the public. And keep in mind, I was a student. I didn't want potential employers finding this blog. Not that there was anything incriminating on it, but corporate types, I hope I can say this, I've realized in life oftentimes don't understand the itch that we creative types do. But more importantly, the blog wasn't about me. It was about scratching my itch. The internet made it possible for me to scratch all of my itches in one place. This was my personal filing cabinet for words and photos about food, a record of where I've eaten and my thoughts about food. And this blog was my little scratch pad in cyberspace where I could do me. Now remember, this was before the age of smartphones and food bloggers. Back then, I was that creepy single diner at a corner table with a camera snapping shots of my plates, and people did not understand what I was doing. They gave me strange looks. My family thought I was crazy. So I never imagined anyone would ever want to visit my little corner of the internet. But as you can probably guess, they did. 15 years ago, very few people were doing what I was doing. And even fewer were doing it at the level that I was doing it at. So chefs from all over the world, unable to leave their kitchens, turned to the internet for information and inspiration. And they found my filing cabinet, a shockingly organized filing cabinet of words and photos about food and restaurants all over the world. My blog became a resource, an important resource at a time when few resources like it existed. 15 years later, I'm still blogging and I'm still doing me, although I'm no longer anonymous. My name is still not on the blog though, but that's because my blog isn't about me, like I said. It's just a place for me to follow my words, photographs, and thoughts about food, and I love it. Remember, the first step to finding your craft, you do you. Number 2, master your craft. If you got that itch, it's not going to go away. Life circumstances may make it harder for you to scratch it, but that creative artistic spirit inside of you is part of you, and it will not die. The hard part is taming it. How do you funnel all of your unbridled passion into something tangible, something useful, something understandable, something accessible, and something profitable? This is where art crosses over into craft. You may fancy yourself an artist, but if you are to be a successful artist, you must first be a craftsman. Hugh MacLeod started doodling on the back of business cards at bars at work. He would draw simple cartoons and attach pithy, oftentimes aspirational thoughts to them. He did this for years. I think he was an ad copywriter at the time, and steadily growing his collection of drawings. He eventually left his day job, and he now writes the blog, The Gaping Void, which I highly recommend to anyone who needs a shot of encouragement and inspiration. And now he runs a successful business as an inspirational cartoonist. His clients include Intel, Volkswagen, Cisco, and his audience includes artists all over the world. He wrote a manifesto entitled How to Be Creative, and you can download it for free. It's been downloaded over 4 million times from his website. In it, he writes, quote, "Doing anything worthwhile takes forever. 90% of what separates successful people and failed people is time, effort, and stamina. I get asked a lot, your business card format is very simple. Aren't you worried about someone ripping it off? Standard answer, only if they can draw more of them than me, better than me. What gives the work its edge is the simple fact that I've spent years drawing them. I've drawn thousands, tens of thousands of man-hours. So if somebody wants to rip off my idea, go ahead. If somebody wants to overtake me in the business card doodle wars, go ahead. You've got many long years ahead of you. Put the hours in, do it for long enough, and magical, life-transforming things can happen eventually. What McLeod is talking about is learning a craft. Remember earlier I said that passion alone does not guarantee success. You've got to put in some elbow grease to turn that passion into success. The cruel reality of life is that there are always going to be far smarter, far more creative, far more talented people than you. But thankfully, in the end, practice does still make perfect. In the end, the tortoise won the race. Slow and steady, learn your craft, and you will come out ahead. If you are to be a successful artist, you must first be a craftsman, so master your craft. Third, quality. I could go on forever about this. I've written about this on my blog many times with regard to restaurants, so I'm going to talk about it generally here. Focus on quality. Quality is the goal of all craftsmen. In 2014, I attended an amazing retrospective of Andy Warhol's art in Tokyo. It was the largest gathering of his work in Japan, in Japan's history. The title of the exhibit was inspired by Warhol's famous prediction that, quote, in the future, everyone will have 15 minutes of fame. I'm inclined to think that Warhol's prediction isn't as far-fetched as his contemporaries might have thought. We live in an increasingly scroll-through, disposable society. Everything is 2 clicks away from going viral, and everything is 2 clicks away from the trash bin. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. I see these social media celebrities, these kids taking selfies and attracting tens of thousands of followers, and ask, what is the legacy of their fame? Now, they're not artists, or at least I don't consider them to be artists, but I do know a number of photographers, people who have a really good eye, whose entire body of work exists on social media, trapped in low resolution on 3x5-inch mobile telephone screens. What is their legacy? There's a scene in the documentary Scatter My Ashes at Bergdorf's in which Ali Hilfiger, the daughter of the designer Tommy Hilfiger, presents her clothing line to Linda Fargo, the gatekeeper at the celebrated department store Bergdorf Goodman on 5th Avenue in New York City. As countless designers in the documentary, from Blahnik to Louboutin, from Vera Wang to von Furstenberg, attest, getting your clothes onto the racks at Bergdorf Goodman can make or break your career. Designer Isaac Mizrahi says in an interview in the documentary about the store, quote, if your clothes are not at that place, then they have no future. When Ali Hilfiger pulls out one of her dresses for Fargo, the first thing that Fargo does is reach out to touch the fabric. She inspects the seams. She's looking for quality. But this is couture. Couture is out of fashion as soon as it leaves the racks. Why would anyone care about quality? You don't need these clothes to last more than a season, and for the people who can afford it, they probably don't need it to last more than one outing. But couture transcends practicality and utility. Couture is luxury. And with luxury, quality is all that matters. Quality is timeless. What if the Greeks had chiseled their statues out of wood instead of marble? What if Michelangelo had painted the Sistine Chapel directly onto the brick and not onto plaster? Some art is meant to be fleeting and to determine whether yours is or not. And if it's not, then how will your creation endure? What is the legacy of your art and your craftsmanship? Focus on quality. And lastly, number 4, I'll just tell you. Your dream job is not your dream job if it doesn't pay you what you're worth. We creative types are fed a lie, which for some reason we believe, and I am one of them, and that is we should be paid less because we get to do what we love, or we should accept less because we get to do what we love. I'd argue that we should get paid more because we have the guts to do what we love. A few years ago, I was offered what I and many people would have considered a dream job. A major publication approached me and told me that they were creating a national restaurant editor position for me. They wanted me to fly around the country 200 some days out of the year and eat at over 200 restaurants a year, photographing and writing about my experiences along the way. They wanted me because, as the editor-in-chief put it, you're the only person in the country who already does all of these things. Given this publication's immense platform, I would be one of the most widely read food writers in the country, if not the world. They gave me carte blanche. They asked me to write the job description, drop a budget, proposal for travel and dining expenses. And shortly after I submitted it, they greenlighted all of it and formally offered me the job. The salary, however, was less than half of what I thought the position should pay. Yeah, it was quite shocking. I had done my research, reached out to colleagues in the industry. I knew the ballpark figures that other national restaurant editors were commanded. Restaurant editors, by the way, who did not travel 200 days out of the year and who did not know how to use a camera. What do I do? A position like this is every food writer's dream. There are only 4 or 5 national restaurant editors with such a wide reach, with that much influence. How could I possibly walk away from this amazing opportunity? As I struggled with my decision, a very wise friend stopped me and said, simply, Bonjwing, you say that this is your dream job, but it's not your dream job if it doesn't pay you what you're worth. She was right. The publication was banking on the fact that the travel, the dining expense account, the industry influence that came with the job would make up for the discounted pay. But as I pointed out to them, those aren't perks. That's the job. Furthermore, once I put my eggs in that publication's basket, I had to commit all of my eggs. My blog would go away, my writing and my photos, they'd all belong to the publication. Was that worth it? The publication stuck to its guns, I stuck to mine, and I walked away. Now, I'm not saying that you should turn down every offer until you get the price you want. You may not last very long if that's the approach you take. Artists do need to eat too. And sometimes, my mom definitely knows that one. And sometimes, I mean, you can imagine me, an Asian with 2 Asian immigrant parents, telling my parents that I was gonna leave the firm practice to write about lettuce. I mean. And sometimes, especially in the beginning, you've got to take what you can get. I certainly did that. Knowing what you're worth, however, is an important part of the equation. It took me 10 years to build up enough credibility and to earn enough weight in the restaurant industry to be offered such an important position. But it also took me 10 years to build up enough confidence to walk away from it. Your dream job probably isn't going to come tomorrow, but if, number 1, you do you, number 2, you master your craft, and number 3, you focus on quality, it just might come someday. And when it does, keep in mind, number 4, your dream job is not your dream job unless it pays you what you're worth. Thank you.